Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review is from 1974, and it's Shanks. Now, if you're familiar with this channel, I have done quite a lot of random reviews, but Shanks is pretty random. This is cinematography number 10. I've got a couple of cinematograph even titles: Bang the Drum Slowly and Touch. You'll perhaps know I won't get all of them because they're quite expensive. They're one of the Vinegar Syndrome partner labels, and they've got some films that I'm not interested in, but I got this cheap off eBay. It's number 1235 out of 4000 if you're that way inclined. And this is random. So this is the last film William Castle, the Carnival Barker cinema of shock director, things like The Tingler. This is the last film he directed. And it stars Marcel Marceau, the famous mime, in two roles. Now, Marceau was adamant he didn't want to make a horror film, and William Castle is kind of famous for making horror films. Granted, his horror films are hardly of the Saw variety or the Halloween variety. They're more kind of sometimes a little bit goofier than that. So this is a little bit, as I say, it's pretty random, as with all the cinematograph releases. Come in these nice little books, and you get a Blu-ray as well as a 4K, which is always nice because, as we know, some 4Ks just come with the 4K, and it's quite nice that they'll also come with the Blu-ray. Castle makes an appearance in the film himself, obviously smoking a cigar. He gives a wonderful performance as a greengrocer, or a grocer as they say in America. I don't think they call them greengrocers the way they do in Britain. So, as I said, this is a bit odd. Starring Marcel Marceau. So the film starts and we see Marceau playing a character called Malcolm, who is a puppeteer, and he comes across, or an old man comes across him, and an old man who has a young girl with him. Not quite sure what the relationship is, and he eventually gives him a job. Malcolm lives with his sister, who is described as a shrew, and her husband, who's a drunk layabout, who gives Malcolm lots of abuse. You know, he goes to his room and artistically creates these puppets, which are quite beautiful. But it ends up that this old gentleman will pay Malcolm to come and help with his experiments, which his sister and brother-in-law are all too keen to get the money off of Malcolm and use for their own means. So he goes to this old man's castle, and the old man is doing experiments on bringing things back from the dead. He shows the example of a frog, and then they do a chicken. But then hilarity ensues when the old man dies. Spoiler alert, but he dies. But then Malcolm decides we'll try to bring him back. And he uses little boxes with little knobs. You know, we see the electricity bring back the frog, but they're essentially remote controls for the dead. There's not a lot of science explained in the film. So he brings back the old man to keep the illusion that he's still going to work. But obviously his sister and brother-in-law eventually find out what's going on, and then Malcolm takes drastic measures to sort them out. And then halfway through the film, a bunch of bikers turn up who are mourning the death of one of their gang, and then they cause havoc in the castle. The young girl turns up and the bikers essentially want to rape her, which strangely enough Marcel Marceau's not that happy about. And you can imagine what happens. It's a strange film. I think everybody associated with it kind of realised it didn't really work, but it's also kind of fascinating. There's genuinely wonderful moments. There's a real creepy kind of atmosphere to the second half of the film, but it kind of plays kind of physical comedy, you know, a little bit of slapstick. It's kind of gentle. It's almost like a family film or a kids film for half of it, but then there's kind of bouts of extreme violence. So you've got Marcel Marceau's character Malcolm, who obviously doesn't talk because it's Marcel Marceau. This kind of gentle comedy mixed in with this kind of darkness, and it's just a little bit odd. As I say, it's a pretty random review, but if you can check it out, it's well worth a wiggle. Again, it's not for everybody, but then again, most of my random reviews aren't. So this is a 4K and the Blu-ray. I wouldn't say it's like a jaw dropper, but it certainly looks really nice, especially when you consider it is almost like a TV movie. So this has a commentary by Kim Newman and Barry Forshaw, which I've only listened to a little bit of, but I'll have to go back and listen to all of it. There's a new interview with producer Stephen North, No Words for the Dead, Reanimating William Castle, Visual Language and the Path to Shanks, a new video essay by Daniel Kramer, who always does good work, Marcel Marceau on Shanks, an archival interview with the actor, and there's new text essays by Heather Drain, Alexandra Heller Nicholas, who we're always a fan of, film professor Murray Leder, editor of Refocus, the films of William Castle, and there's vintage radio spots. The film itself is about 93 minutes. It does kind of drag in the middle a little bit, but as I said, it's lots of fun for the family until you kind of get to the last third, where it's altogether a little bit darker. So that's my random review of a very random film. A landmark film though, because it's William Castle's last film that he directed. It's kind of funny in the commentary, Kim Newman and Forshaw kind of talk about, you know, obviously that clash between Marceau not wanting to do a horror film and William Castle saying, you know, that's what I'm famous for, even though by the time 1974 came around he wasn't really famous for much. You remember The Tingler was 1958, so it's a bit of a while since that. Yeah, a strange oddity, but it's also well worth your while if you're into strange oddities. I think you probably must be if you're on this channel. So thanks so much for watching this very random review. Please let me know if you've seen Shanks and what you think of it, and hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films saying farewell.